This is the I'm Possible Project Show, where we interview real people who have achieved incredible feats in the face of overwhelming odds, showing that impossible is just a state of mind and that anything is possible. I'm your host, Joshua Rivedal. Today, in episode 20, Life Consequences, I talk to Ethan Fisher. Let's jump right in. Ethan Fisher has overcome very serious and tragic obstacles, which have given him a story to tell, and he tells an incredible story. I got a chance to hear him a few weeks back. We are both part of the new speaker class of 2017 at Campus Speak, and I heard him give a 10-minute, and it was incredibly brilliant. Prison, drinking and driving, college, achievements. So, Ethan, Mr. Fisher, E-Fish, it's good to have you on the show, man.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate the E-Fish shout out right there.
No doubt, man. I tend to do that with people's names, like especially when I'm like really, kind of becoming friends. So, I didn't want to give too much of that bio. You tell your story way better than I do. But if you would, please, would you give us a little background on your life, where you've been, where you're going, the E-Fish experience?
Basically, my life has been engulfed with the love of basketball. Started playing basketball when I was a little kid, and it quickly became my first love. And you've seen me in person. I'm not very tall, 5'10" on a good day, and 5'11" and 6 foot in the college Flyers when I used to play. But so I love basketball, and it gave me an opportunity to stand out in high school and in college. But behind all that, basketball became, what we've talked about and you've seen is I dealt with a lot of depression and suicidal thoughts when I was growing up as a kid, and basketball kind of masked all that. And then with that being said, I turned into a drinker and a partier to cover up all my hidden issues. And at the same time, it was part of my exterior confidence where I could drink and actually talk to people and have a social life. That social life quickly took over into drugs and alcohol, and ended up failing out of 5 college basketball programs after high school, and ended up drinking and driving one night. 23 years old, went to a house party the first time and drank wine for the first time. Woke up in a blackout and found out that I drunk drove and ended up killing an innocent person. And ever since that night in 2003, my life has completely been flipped upside down. I did the calculations yesterday, actually, and kind of preparing for this podcast with you, Josh, and it's been 13 years, 8 months, and a few days since the night of the accident. And I always thought that it would get easier, and it hasn't. And I've told my story hundreds and hundreds of times, and it still hurts me to the core. Even just bringing it up right now, it's rough. Knowing what I did and what I caused, all I could do was lay in that hospital bed and figure out that I had to change my life because of what I did and what I caused. And so for the last 13 years, I've basically just been being the best person that I can. I'm not perfect. I'm far from it, but I've worked my tail off to go back to school and finish my degrees and go back and play college basketball, which has never been done before. I actually went out and had dinner with a couple of my teammates last night that I hadn't seen in about 6 years, and we talked about it and just how crazy that was with, their starting point guard not being able to travel with them because I was still in the system under the Department of Corrections in Colorado. And so it's been a strange, weird, bizarre life and a sad life, since the night of the accident. Yeah, I just keep it moving.
Yeah, there's a lot there. There's a lot there to cover and to ponder. And the night of the accident until today, you mentioned you had to live with what happened, so I don't really want to focus on the details of what happened, but rather that's a terrible thing to have happened. I don't need to drive that point home, but what I'm curious about, how do you manage that? That's trauma, okay? Whether or not you were at fault, and you were, but that's still trauma. And to be able to be your best self and to keep it moving, as you said, how do you keep it moving? Mentally, I think most of all, because there's probably, you mentioned mental illness, you mentioned depression, you mentioned some alcohol abuse as well. So what does it look like now to manage all that plus the day-to-day of what happened? How do you keep it moving, brother?
So one of the biggest things for me is being sober. I've been sober since the accident. I will never drink again. That clarity has allowed me to keep my mental focus in the right direction. It's been rough. I have some really dark times, when things start to go really well for me or where I'm starting to enjoy life. I always come back to reality and think about Bill, and Bill's the individual that lost his life, and it brings me down. And the whole, I don't take medication. I don't see a counselor. So ever since that night of the accident, I've had a new, and I'm not churchy, I'm not religious, but I have a personal relationship with God, and that's who I talk to when I have issues. Going through that day to day, I always pray for Bill and his family. I pray for my family, and I keep myself focused on those important things, and that's how I get through my day to day. It would have been a lot easier to give up. I know a lot of people through the prison system who have been in similar situations where they committed a vehicular homicide, and I know many of them have gone back to drinking and partying as a way to try to forget what they did, but they are still screwing up because they can't remain sober. Just like mental health, alcohol and addiction is a mental disorder, and they can't break that cycle. I've just been fortunate that I have a wonderful family. I've got good friends, and I have a support system. So when things go rough, I always find somebody to either talk to, or I go to the gym. I play a lot of basketball, listen to a lot of music. I do a lot of writing. And those are those things that help me deal with my issues, because there's not a day that goes by that I don't struggle. I randomly drive down streets, and it happened last night. It happened today. I randomly just drive, and I'll think about Bill, and I'll start crying in the middle of an intersection when I'm driving. It's an issue that I'm going to deal with for the rest of my life. And I'll say it in some of my speeches is, prison was easy for me. I did my time. I got out. I have to deal with a lifelong sentence. So I'm going to deal with this sentence for the rest of my life until the day that I die, that I have to know of what I did. And that's the biggest thing that keeps me motivated, is I can't let them down. And that's why I keep pushing forward.
I can't imagine having to live with that knowledge on the day-to-day, but it sounds to me like you're living for more than one person, because before you were living for Ethan, and now you're living for Ethan and for Bill and for the people who you're speaking to when you do your speeches. I hear something, and maybe it's only because I know you, but I hear about redemption. And just like life, I think redemption isn't necessarily a destination, it's about the journey. And so I'm really curious, you say, I can't let them down, I can't let Bill down. How are you actively moving forward in the realm of redemption and in the realm of living for Bill and his family? How are you changing the world to the best of your ability right now and every day?
And that's a good question. So I look at it like this. Me personally, I'll never be able to make up for what I did. I can never bring Bill back. No matter how many speeches I do, no matter how many kids I influence and change their lives, I can't bring Bill back. But I can't stop doing what I'm doing and feel sorry for myself, because that's not helping anybody. And so when I speak, like we talked about before this podcast, I speak first to prevent drunk driving. Across the country, every 53 minutes, somebody's killed by a drunk driver. That's something that can be prevented by a motivational or preventative speaker like myself. Now, if we break it down even further, if you add drunk driving, drug driving, distracted driving, texting while driving, every 15 minutes, somebody is killed by one of those drivers. These are all things that could be preventable. And so my whole entire mission now with this speaking career and the nonprofit is to prevent as many people from getting behind the wheel in those situations. Now, I'll never know how many people I influence to change. I'll never know how many people don't drive after they've been drinking because of my story. But those are why I do what I do, because if I can get one kid from every single speech that I do to not drink and drive, I might have just saved their life. I might have just saved someone else's life. Now, when I get kids that tell me they take keys from their friends when they go to parties after hearing me speak, they don't know it, but they probably saved somebody else's life too. So I look at it as this big domino effect that I'm trying to change the way culture is seen with drinking and driving. Now, we both know, because we work with the youth in middle school and high schools, not every kid's going to listen. But if we can get those very few that are on that fence, that's why we keep doing what we're doing. And that's why I keep trying to speak as much as possible. And that's the whole goal, is to try to not let anybody ever have to experience what I experienced and what Bill's family had to experience. Because you think about it, they don't have their husband, they don't have their father, they don't have their grandfather. And that's something I can't imagine, because I have my dad, I have my mom, and I think about them every day, and I'm blessed to have them, you know, and Bill's family they don't have Bill. So if I can try to prevent that feeling for a couple families, then that's what I'm going to keep doing.
It sounds to me, and this is what a lot of people, or maybe not a lot of people, but the people that I know who are able to move forward in a positive and healthy way, they make meaning of tragedy. They turn a lemon into a lemonade, and unfortunately, those lemons came off your tree some years back. But nevertheless, feeling sorry for yourself, as you say, isn't going to help anybody. It's not going to change anything, and it's certainly not going to help. And so, in a sense, to me, it sounds like you're doing your work in Bill's name, maybe without saying it, out of respect, maybe for the family. And like me, you do what you do to prevent suffering and to help change the world. And when we speak and when we do what we do, you know, we want to prevent pain and suffering, but we also want to inspire people to move their feet and maybe to take on a role similar to what we do. However, human beings are interesting creatures. It seems like we have to be backed into a corner and either screw up or something happens to us, and then we're able to make change. Then we see the light. My mission, and I think it's your mission as well, is to say, you don't have to go through all the crap that I went through. You don't have to go through any crap at all. You get a chance to make some choices and decisions to move forward with your life with hopefully as little pain and suffering as possible, and hopefully as little pain and suffering as possible that then propels you to greatness in your sphere of influence. Be great, but don't screw up like me, or don't wait to get help, as I did 6-7 years ago when I was in suicidal crisis. So I applaud you for trying to leave this place better than when you found it, and taking the road of redemption rather than to redemption, but taking that road and staying on it, because being sober is not an easy thing. I know enough about addiction and enough people living with addiction issues, myself included. It's not an easy path to take. So that's one thing, but the benefits are stellar. So a lot of times I want to talk about obstacles and how they change your life for the better. I think it goes without saying, even though you have to live with what you have to live with, the knowledge, would you say that your life is better post that situation rather than prior? And if so, why? So this question, and before I let you answer, I don't think I've ever asked this question, never with this set of circumstances, and so I'm kind of tap dancing around it a little bit, because I know there's a life that was lost. So I want to be careful about asking the question, but can you do so regardless?
I get that question a lot. So, you know, my speaking career, I open up Q&A after my speech for students. So that question that you've tiptoed around, I've gotten many times. And it is a very difficult question to answer, and it's very difficult for me to admit it. But my life has been better since the accident. And I wouldn't have been able to say that with that much confidence 3 or 4 years ago, because I would have felt guilty in saying it. And I still feel guilty saying it, but I've had to answer this question so many times that I'm prepared for it. If it wasn't for the accident, I wouldn't be alive. People don't realize that from my sophomore year in college, from 2000 to 99, 2000 year, I drank every single day trying to kill myself. I didn't want to wake up. So every night that I was drinking, it was to die. So I spent 4 or 5 years of my life trying to die. Now, I had some good times in between that with all my basketball and my friends and my family and having stuff. But I was always, you know, basically from 8th grade until the accident, I had no purpose in life. I didn't care to live. I didn't care if I died. I didn't care about anything. And that night of the accident, I had a bed made for me. I had a place to stay. I had no intention of ever getting in a car, because that's how we always prepared at my friend's house. So I knew I was going to go there and drink and pass out and stay the night, wake up and go home and do it again. That's how I did it every day. And it sucks to admit, but when I woke up in that hospital and found out what happened, I had no other option but to change. And that moment when God told me to change and handle my responsibilities was the moment that I had to accept what happened, and I had to move forward. Now, it hasn't been easy. Like I said 10 minutes ago, like I have days where I feel guilty for being alive. I have days where I feel guilty for being able to go back and play college basketball or to do all these really cool, amazing things with my grades and my academics or going and speaking and coaching in Hawaii. Like, I have times where I feel guilty about that stuff because of what happened. But what am I to do? Am I supposed to just give up because of what happened and not do anything positive and ignore the fact of what happened when I have an opportunity to voice my life and use it as a message that can help other people? And that's how I have to look at it now, is I don't want to be a speaker. This isn't the path I chose. I don't want to get up in front of 2,000 kids and tell all the deepest, darkest secrets of my life. It's not what I want to do with my life. I wanted to be a coach. I wanted to, be a part of basketball. But I've sacrificed everything to get to this point because I know it's helping other kids. It's helping student athletes. It's doing these things that I didn't want to do in the first place. It's for a greater good. My life is better since that night, and it sucks to say it, but I haven't given up. I've worked really hard to get to this point, and I'm not going to stop because, without any agencies or anybody helping me, I've spoke to almost 35,000 students. I've got over 1,000 letters from kids who are opening up about their suicides, their depressions, their families dying. I had a kid that killed one of his family members because he was trying to kill him, and these kids are opening up to me, and I'm giving them an option to change their lives and hopefully for the better. And Josh, dealing with mental health and this stuff, it is a heavy burden putting this stuff on our psyches. But if we can help, that's why we do it.
Thanks for being so vulnerable and for answering that question. I can not quite relate, but I've gotten the question, and I'm going to jump back to you in a second, but I just want to point out a little relatability to maybe normalize a little bit of your thought process. Just the fact that I lost my father to suicide in 2009. And I've gotten this question a few times. What's life like now? How is life different? How is life better? Or how is life better after your near suicide attempt? And my God, life is so much better. I wouldn't have reached over 100,000 people with a positive message, with a life-changing message over 6 years. Books, speaking, talking to you right now, meeting my wife, going to all these different places. Would I trade that for my dad's life? These are the cards that exist, whether I had a hand in dealing them or whether life just threw them my way. Same with you. So we play this deck and we do what we must and we move forward and we teach others how to play their hand without screwing up. Something just crossed my mind as you were talking about your life in the aftermath. Forgiveness. Forgiveness is really, really difficult, especially when we've been harmed. And I don't know about Bill's family. And frankly, I'm not even going to go there. Forgiveness or not forgiveness, because forgiveness is difficult and it's not owed to us. We don't deserve forgiveness for anything. Nobody deserves anything. We can only do the best with what's inside our head and how we move forward in life. But I want to say this, but I would say forgiveness of self can sometimes be incredibly difficult as well. I'm not giving you a free pass, but I am saying that there were circumstances, mental illness that was untreated, that contributed to all this. So there's an element of some very, very difficult circumstances. You put yourself in that, but I think over time, forgiveness of self is going to be paramount in your growth and in what you do on stage and the people that you reach. Because a lot of us out there have a difficult time forgiving ourselves, and myself included, me included, because there's things that I've done and done some stupid things because my mental health was not being taken care of. So forgiveness of self, it's not the easiest thing to come about. Your life, you get to be a testimony, you get to be cautionary tale, you get to be all these things to these kids, and 1,000 letters. My God, it's rewarding. These kids, they need guidance. I get a chance to walk into rooms all the time, and after I'm done hanging out, kids talking to me about, one-on-one, a suicide attempt, multiple attempts, rape, molestation, parenthood as a teenager, things that are happening at home, and we get a chance to make a difference and make an impact. So one of the difficult things about speaking is a constant look at the past, because in our regular day-to-day, it's not healthy to look at the past. It's important to live in the present and to move forward so that we have a good future. And there's the ability to do that in our lives, but the constant look at the past isn't easy. Would you agree with me on that?
Oh, it's not easy. Before I say that, I want to I want to say, with the forgiveness aspect, I hold myself 100% accountable for what I did. I will never blame anybody for influencing me to drink or try drugs. I was the only one that ever made those decisions, and I'm the one that screwed up. And I don't want anyone to ever think that I've ever blamed anybody for the night of the accident or anything like that because of that forgiveness aspect. Yes, I've worked really hard to be in this position to influence kids like we were talking about. Now, I forget where I was going with that, but I just wanted to address that because that's one of the biggest things that I do with my speaking is I address the accountability aspect. Even if you're a junior high kid and you're dealing with mental health issues, there's no, and I've started to cover this with my speech, is that if you're feeling bad or you're having a bad time, I address the fact because depression has been so taboo over the last couple of years, well, really forever. People don't want to talk about it. And so you can't use that as an excuse. So if there is something going on, you need to go see a counselor. You need to go talk to somebody about it. And that's one thing that I've tried to address because people don't want to talk about it, right? And especially student athletes. And they see it as a weakness. But on the flip side of being on that accountability, and you can't use that as an excuse. So you have to find a way to address that issue. And what we get to do, Josh, is we use our stories and show these students that they need to address these issues because no one can look inside them and say, hey, this kid's feeling depressed. This kid's dealing with emotional issues because their parents split. They're dealing with teenage pregnancy. You can't look inside them and determine what mental health issues are going on. So we have to address the fact and say, hey, you're accountable for getting your own health and finding help because not everybody shows it. I walked around for 5 years and nobody knew that I was suicidal. Everybody thought I was this happy kid and I had knives to my wrist. Kids go through high school and junior high and their parents don't know that they're dealing with issues. Their principals don't know that they're dealing with their issues. So what we do, Josh, is we bring that issue about to where these kids now can at least go find somebody to talk about it because they're accountable for their own health. We don't have a crystal ball. We can't look inside and say, hey, you're dealing with depression. You're dealing with suicide. You're dealing with, family issues. These kids have to be able to feel confident enough to go out and get help. And that's something I never thought about doing with my speaking or doing anything. My whole goal was to prevent DUIs and vehicular homicide. But because of my past and my history with mental illness and all that stuff, that's become a huge aspect of my speech and giving these kids a platform to say, hey, if Ethan Fisher can talk about it, if Josh can talk about it, why can't I go see a counselor and help myself? Do you see where I was coming with that accountability aspect? Yeah. I'm my own person. It was my decision to drink. It was my decision to get behind that vehicle. It was my decision to even go to that party. It was my decision to even start smoking weed. And I will never blame anybody for my faults. And I want people to realize that every person has their own thought process, no matter how old or their upbringing. It's up to them on what choices and decisions they make. And with you and I, we get an opportunity to tell our stories where we hopefully make those kids realize the moment they leave that auditorium or gym or wherever we see them, that consciousness is going to take over and they're going to say, hey, I need to do my homework tonight. I need to go see a counselor, or I need to go to the gym and get up, extra shots. And I don't know, that's just, as you can tell, like when I get talking about this, I just, I get passionate and I have so much that I want to be able to help these youth with.
Yeah. It's a mission, man. It's a calling. These kids have their whole life, or hopefully have their whole lives ahead of them, and just to be able to thrive. And I told somebody once, they were like, what do you want? And I was like, ultimately, world peace. And like, you need to take that to therapy. And I was like, yeah, maybe. But really, I mean, in my little slice of the world, my several, 100,000 people, 35 for you and growing, hopefully we have, if not world peace, peace in their world as best possible. And the forgiveness piece and the accountability, man, you don't get a free pass, and I hate to say it so bluntly like that, but what I do say a lot with the friends of mine who live with maybe addiction issues or mental illness or whatever, and they've made some poor decisions, you don't get a free pass, you don't get a free pass to do whatever you want, but you do get to choose how to move forward. So, I totally get where you're coming from, and I just wanted to clarify a little bit what I meant by my comments as well. So, and I think the forgiveness piece too, that's on you. Like, that's probably something you don't even need to talk about in public. Like, it just came to my mind, so it was probably a little more intrusive than I should have probably brought up. But you know, some of the stupid things that I've done in my life, which don't compare to what's gone on in your world, I don't talk about in public, really. You know, it's not. I don't need to. It's not something that's going to help anybody. But at the same time, those things that I've done do require me to forgive myself, and then to, you know, it's just a challenge, man.
It is a challenge. And I know you weren't trying to be intrusive. It's just, that is one of the hardest things that I deal with, is forgiveness in myself. Now, I know God's forgiven me. I wouldn't be alive if not. But I have such a hard time forgiving myself that it affects my life. It affects my personal life. It affects my friends. It affects the relationships that I have, because I still, to this day, almost 14 years later, I still feel guilty for living. And everybody, like what you're just saying, like, people have told me I need to forgive myself. And I held myself for almost 10 years after the accident. There was not a day that I didn't think about dying, because I wanted to give Bill back his life, but I couldn't do that. Now, when my sentence finally ended on April 1st of 2014, that was the first day where I actually had a little bit of forgiveness, saying, hey, I've done my time that the system gave me. It's time for you to move on, type thing. So what you're saying, no, it's very pertinent to what I go through. Is I struggle with it. I have Bill, my whole entire right arm is covered in a sleeve, a tattoo of all the bad things I've done in Bill's gravestone. So every day that I brush my teeth, I see it. And it's kind of like that getting punched in the gut or punched in the face, where that's my reality. And it's kind of my own self-punishment. And I know that's not mentally, I shouldn't do that, but it's kind of my mental, programming saying, hey, don't get too high on yourself because of what happened. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive myself. And that is a very, I'm glad you brought it up, because that is a very, very, very difficult thing for me to deal with. And I struggle with it. I'll be the first one to tell you I struggle with it, because it's psychologically, it's just difficult. And that's the stuff I wish people could see, is I can't bring Bill back. And I can sit there, and you haven't seen my actual speech, where I have pictures of the accident, and it goes back to that whole dwelling on the past. I see those pictures every day that I practice my speech. I see those pictures every day that I pray. Every day that I close my eyes, I see the image of his car. I see my car. People get to see that in the speech, but they don't get that psychological feeling that I have every day of not forgiving myself. And again, I'm not blaming anybody. This is my issues that I have to deal with. I just don't want anyone to ever have to experience that, because it's no fun. It sucks. But that's a part of what I consider my punishment. I'm glad you brought that up, and it's a difficult issue for me.
Without a doubt. And there's an element of self-flagellation in that, which I don't know has ever brought anyone closer to their truest self, or to God, or to the universe. But just like life, just like redemption, forgiveness is a journey. So you're still in the beginning of it, and keep walking that road, man. Don't veer from it, because just like everything else that you've gone through, and I hate giving challenges on the road, like this is supposed to be a conversation. I don't know. I have a fondness for you, and I want to see you do the best that you can, and you're doing that for other people. And now it's time to do it for you, man. And I'll step off my soapbox.
I appreciate it, Josh, because you're reaching out, and you see it, because you deal with mental health issues too. And I think it's great for the listeners. People need to see that there's this other side of what we deal with that really can't be felt unless you're going through it. And so we can talk about it and have a discussion. And I'm glad you're challenging me. I as you can tell, like everything that I've been through since the night of the accident, I look at life as a challenge, and I embrace it. That's why I work so hard at what I do, because I like to be challenged, because it forces me to try to bring out the best of myself. So if you're challenging me, let's do it. I love it.
All right, dog. That's the athlete in you too. Like I was never really good at sports. I mean, I was serviceable. I don't have a left hand in basketball. It's incredibly mediocre, but I relate to these sports analogies. We keep it in the gym together, and we figure out how to get those competitive, metaphorically speaking, get those competitive games of horse and 21. But we keep challenging each other to get in the gym and do what we got to do so we can be at the highest performance when we go out. Fish, man, I want to change directions for a minute because we've been all mad serious, and that's important. And I think our listeners are going to get a ton out of it. But I do want people to see, because my first impression of you, dude, was this very sullen, morose kind of a dude, which there was no judgment in that. It was just, you had 3 days to get to know one another, including 6 or 7 other people. And then when we got a chance to kind of shoot the breeze a little bit, this dude has a sense of humor, and it's not all this other stuff. So I want people to see that side of you too, dude. So this is a quick fire round. This is just a little fun. So no right or wrong answers, dude. Just play with me here. All right. So Fish, man, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word, desire.
I like that.
Quick desire. Yeah, desire, and I use that in the speech just because when you have the desire to do anything, like, nobody can stop you, right? And so being like joking about it, I had the desire to go back after being in prison, incarcerated. I went back and played college basketball as an inmate of Colorado. Like, I'm laughing at that because it's never been done before. My teammates and I were laughing about that last night. Like, it, in all seriousness, but you think about that, it's never been done before. I have to laugh at it because it's crazy.
That's where desire gets you. The early adopter, the first to do whatever, the perseverance, willpower, reaching out for support. And it's really, I hate to plug the brand, as it were, but it's taking impossible to impossible, man. Possible and impossible are mindsets. Desire is a mindset. So, Fish, what is your least favorite word?
Least favorite word. Right now, it'd probably be too old, even though that's 2 words. But I'm talking about when people, we'll hyphenate it. So too old. So when I get all these young bucks who are still trying to challenge me in basketball, and they say I'm too old, and then I'm still dribbling circles around them. So when they call me too old, I don't like that.
I don't know. Too old, Ethan Fisher, man.
But I am 37, so I'm getting up there. But I can still get up and down when I need to. I just can't do it for 40 minutes.
Maybe we get you to join that Big 3 league. That new Big 3 league, man.
Oh yeah, I'd fit in perfect with that.
I bet.
J Will, and AI right there. Those are my 2. Yep, those are the 2 guys I used to look up to.
Dude, all right. Next question. Somebody made a movie of your life, E-Fish story. I think this will be on, I don't know, maybe it would air simultaneously on, I don't think Spike TV exists anymore, but Spike TV and Lifetime. We'll get both sides of it. So if somebody made a movie of your life, who would play the title role?
So I have written a little, script about my life for a Showtime type series. So who would play it? I would have liked to have said Leo DiCaprio because he did Basketball Diaries, which was one of my favorite movies growing up. Mm-hmm. But going back to the last question, I think he and I are both too old to play me when I was going through all this stuff.
Right.
So see, I do have a little personality. I had to throw that in there for you.
Let's go Zac Efron. We'll get him to play too old Ethan Fisher, and we'll get him to play young Ethan Fisher. And
and he's gonna have to lose some of those muscles he bulked up on with that last movie he did.
And I'm gonna angle for a position in this movie as well. I want to play the no nonsense assistant coach. We're gonna embellish a little bit, so I'm gonna play the no nonsense assistant coach who puts you in your place because I can do that. I got range, man. I can act.
Yeah, well, let's backtrack because none of those assistant coaches ever put me in my place. They either never talked to me. I was just such a jackass that if the head coach didn't have anything for me, I went from starting to a non-factor till I quit. So we'll find you a better position would be more of like one of my friends trying to keep me sober.
All right. Yeah. I'm just saying I'm a package deal with this movie.
We'll make it happen.
Let's see. I think I got 2 more questions. Fish, this might be a rhetorical question. You might just be able to answer this. Who or what is your spirit animal?
I don't think I really have one, but since my name is Fish, I might as well just go with that. I'm like a salmon, I guess. I'm always swimming upstream. All
right. I like that, man. All right, so last one. If heaven exists, Ethan, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say to you as you enter?
That I've done right, that I've lived a good life since that night.
So far, so good. Awesome. So that's the end of our quick fire round. It was not quick, and there was no fire, so I'm going to have to rename that. But what does the future hold for you? Next 6 months to a year? Your personal vision for your personal life, business, speaking. What's going down in the next 6 months to a year for you?
Well, if you haven't gathered, which you and I, we've talked about it, my speaking career is everything to me. So I want to be doing as many speeches as I possibly can until the kids can no longer relate to me when they start saying I'm too old. So for the next 6 months to a year, I just want to continually grow this speaking career and my nonprofit to be able to help, the middle schools and all the way up to college students. So that's my whole goal, is just to speak as much as possible. Outstanding, brother. Outstanding. And I'm excited to see where that takes you. And I think we talked about it before, but I think we're gonna figure out some ways to make that happen together. Yes,
so
sir.
I'm excited for that. Yeah. Now, if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to follow your work, get you on a speech, say hello, check in, help the nonprofit, whatever it is, if people want to get in touch with you, what's like the best way or maybe a couple ways that people can do that?
The nonprofit is called Life Consequences. It's lifecon.org. And that's all the middle school and high school events that I do. And if they want to see what I'm doing with the colleges, it's ethan-fisher.com. And there are emails on both of those websites that they can reach out to me. And, if they ever have any questions, or even if you get a student listening to this, I actually have a private student email that's at students@lifecon.org. But those are the ways that you can find me, and I'm always available. And if people want to talk about issues, that's also what I do. So. All
right. Thanks, brother. Dude, Ethan, man, I so appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on to the show today. It was a real treat, man. It was a real honor as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
You've been listening to the I'm Possible Project show with Joshua Rivedal and guest Ethan Fisher. I love sharing stories and how to turn impossible into I'm possible. If you want more inspirational stories, our second and third books are in pre-order right now. Changing Minds, Breaking Stigma, Achieving the Impossible, as well as Lemonade Stand. Both contain powerful stories of overcoming tremendous odds. When life gives you lemons, squeeze, add sugar, and pick up a copy of The I'm Possible Project. www.IamPossibleProject.com/pre-order. Thank you so much for tuning in. You're more than a community. You're part of the I'm Possible family. Until next time, sending you lots of love.